Well, welcome, men. My name is Dwane Cardenas. I'm the pastor at the Ybor location, and I hope you've been enjoying your series, We Are More Than Conquerors. And today I get to talk about an attribute of God. He's all-knowing. That's right. He knows the yesterday, the today, to tomorrow, and the in-between. All the little details sometimes that kind of irritates us, he's into the details of our lives. And we're going to find out a little bit about that as I get to talk through the life of Moses, a portion of his life where we could see God being all-knowing in what was happening in his life. And just a little background on Moses before I get into the verses that I want to share with you. Moses was born in a time when the Israelites were in slavery. And that created an oppression. But also they were multiplying fast. And so Pharaoh got annoyed. And his annoyance, he created a decree that he wanted to have all the 2-year-old babies killed. Yeah, he did. Kind of harsh, right? But from that moment, we could see that there was a threat on Moses' life. But his mom, any mom would do this for their child. She wanted to save him, and so she created a basket. And she actually kind of, I don't know if they had it back then, but she probably created some spray seal, just kind of seal that thing up really nice, and put Moses in there and put him in the river. Kind of sent him in the unknown. But God had it that Pharaoh's daughter would come out to bathe, and she would hear this cry and find Moses, this little baby, in a basket. And so she retrieved him and brought him home. And Moses ended up being raised in the palace. Yeah, he became a little bit of royalty. But as he grew, he understood that he didn't quite fit. And so one day, he saw that there was a fight happening between an Egyptian and an Israelite. And so he wanted to separate it, but he ended up killing the Egyptian. Kind of harsh, right? I didn't think he did it intentionally. It just happened. But even sometimes when you didn't do something intentionally and it just happened, God can have a plan through it all. But in that moment, he feared for his life and he fled and he went into the wilderness. And this is where we want to pick up the story and see how God continues to be all-knowing in Moses' life. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 1 through 4, just my first point, God's going to get your attention. In Exodus chapter 3, verse 1 through 4 reads, "One day Moses was tending to the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led the flock far into the wilderness and came to Mount Sinai. Then the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the middle of the bush. Moses stared in amazement, thought that the bush was engulfed in flames. It didn't burn up. 'This is amazing,' Moses said to himself. 'Why isn't the bush burning up? I must go see.' When the Lord saw Moses coming in close to take a closer look, God called to him from the middle of the bush, 'Moses, Moses.' 'Here I am,' Moses replied. Man, as I think about what was happening there, Moses probably was at the lowest place in his life, trying to figure out, how do I start this life over? But we find him in the wilderness. We find him having an encounter where God showed up in an amazing way. And one of the things that I want to highlight is the burning bush. I think Moses have seen burning bush time and time again. But what created the curiosity was that this bush wasn't being consumed. And so that created a curiosity in him. I know I wouldn't draw near to a fire. I've roasted marshmallows before. I've been in campfires before. There's just a heat that kind of allows you want to step back. But man, Moses stepped in that moment. And I think that we can apply that in our lives sometimes when our crisis and our situation seems to be overwhelming and it seems like it's meant to consume us. What if we would take a different approach? What if you would think that maybe God is creating this scenario or this situation to bring a sense of curiosity, that you would draw closer to him and not run away from him? I think that's what we're finding out here in Moses' life. And it said here that when the Lord saw Moses coming to take a closer look, he called to him to the middle of the bush. See, God has a desire to want to have a conversation with us in every season of our lives. I don't know what's your burning bush experience. I don't know what wilderness moment you may have been in. But what I do know that in my wilderness moment, God took a hold of getting my attention. I remember being in my car accident. It was like around 2004. And it caused me to be bedridden for about 3 months. But it was in that time that God just showed up in the four walls of that room, and I developed an appetite for his word. I started to learn how to read my Bible. I started to pray. What could have been a defeating moment or a depressing moment, man, God turned it into something amazing. I'm standing here before you now because of that defining moment in my life. So if you're in a season right now where you've ran away to the wilderness or you're looking at something consuming your life, change your perspective. See it from the filter that God is all-knowing and he sees you and he cares. And this is what we find in the next couple of verses down in Exodus 3, verse 7. Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. It is the land flowing with milk and honey, the land where the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites now live. Look, the cry of the Lord, the cry of the people of Israel has reached me. I just love that. It said the cry have reached him. Do you believe that God hears your cries? Do you believe that he hears your prayers in those moments of feeling oppressed or defeated or depressed? This verse reminds us that he does hear. And he said, I have even seen how harshly the Egyptians have abused them. Now, go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people, Israel, out of Egypt. See, God didn't just see Moses cry. He also saw the cry of the nation. It shows that, again, God, the all-knowing God, is into the details of our lives. I don't know if you are in a place where you kind of hit a dead end and you don't feel confident with applying for that job that you know you need kind of financially to progress, but because you didn't have the education, but you have the experience, you're disqualifying yourself. Man, I think God is telling us different as we're learning from Moses. He's saying, I see you. I see the distress in your eyes. I see the fear. I see the unknown for the future. But man, can you trust me and take a step of faith in this season? And I think that's what he was encouraging Moses to do, because Moses had disqualified himself. He probably thought when he committed that murder that was it for his future, that there was no one that was going to believe in him. But here we find God having a conversation with Moses, encouraging him to take a step. You see, your season doesn't change how God sees you, because he still sees you more than a conqueror. And that's how he saw Moses, more than a conqueror. You know, God calls us to more. God have called you to more. I get you feel insecure. I get you feeling valuable. I get you feel like, man, you're not enough to lead your family. Your numbers are never looking right, so I can't get married. I was just talking to a young man at church the other day. He's like, Pastor, I don't think I can get married. I'm like, why? He said, I just can't get this dream job. I can't get my finances. Like, he was disqualifying himself before he took a step of faith, trying to get everything right. And I think that's where we miss the mark when we try to do it. But the all-knowing God wants to be invited into our lives, to come alongside, to help us to get it accomplished. And that's what we're seeing here in Moses' life. As we read here now, in Exodus 3, verses 11 through 14, it says, but Moses protested to God. Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people of Israel out of Egypt? God answered, I will be with you. That's comforting. I will be with you. I could remember going back, being in that four walls, recovering from an accident, that God was calling me into ministry, and I was like, I can't do that, God. I will never be able to accomplish that. Well, I'm doing it now. Why? Because God was with me. We have to get to a place where we acknowledge him in our journey. And this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. But Moses protested. He's saying again, I don't know, God. I don't know. If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors have sent me to you, they will ask me, what is your name? Then what should I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. That's really simple, right? I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel. I am sent me to you. So we could see clearly that God had called Moses to more. And in the dialogue, Moses kind of keep trying to talk himself out of this opportunity of a new season that God was inviting him into on a journey to help to rescue his people, pretty much redeeming himself. Could you imagine him showing back up to Pharaoh? I mean, I'm just saying this in terms of he was standing there in that moment thinking, man, how can I stand before Pharaoh again? He knew what Pharaoh wanted to do with him. And it's just like me and you. Sometimes we have done so wrong and we have felt so ashamed in what we have done that we can't stand in front of our most challenging season of our lives. But I can tell you, with God, you can withstand and stand under any adversity of your life. See, you've got to get to that place where you get uncomfortable. You got to get to that place where you get uncomfortable, because comfortable will not allow you to experience God. Comfortable will allow you to stay mundane, and pretty much you get outdated. You know, there's no results there sometimes when you just get comfortable. But God chose Moses for more, and I'm believing that he's chosen you for more. He's chosen you for more, even in your addictive past. Or you're in transition right now, that you're in that journey of recovery. And I was just at the CR, I was just in a CR meeting the other day, and I got to hear 12 testimonies of people, redemptive story. And one of the theme and the common thread was they acknowledged that God was all-knowing throughout their journey after they reflect and look back where God had brought them from. And that's what we're seeing here in Moses' life. And the last point I want to make is God is all-knowing. He's all-knowing. In Exodus 3, verses 21 through 22, he said, and I will cause the Egyptians to look favorable on you. They will give you gifts when you go, so you will not leave empty-handed. Every Israelite woman will ask for articles of silver and gold and fine clothing from her Egyptian neighbor and from the foreign women in their houses. You will dress your sons and daughters with these, stripping the Egyptians of their wealth. That's just a reminder that God is going to deliver on his promises. But one of the things I want to pull out of there was this was generational. There was a generational blessing out of Moses' obedience. And I don't know what the blessing would be out of your obedience, acknowledging that God is all-knowing, that he wants to get your attention, that God sees you and that he cares, that God's called you to more, and that God is all-knowing. He wants to bless us. And we see that clearly here, because I could just imagine the woman was the slaves working, cleaning the household, and looking at all the fine jewelry and all the name brand stuff in their closet and just thinking, man, one day, if just one day, I could have something like that. Well, the day came and God allowed them to step out of Egypt in fashion. They were stepping out of Egypt in style. They did not know that how the journey started, it would have finished different. And I know you're looking at your journey now and you're having some conversations in your head. I don't think it's possible. Well, let me tell you, I think it is. He did it for Moses, he did it for me, and he can do it for you. Let's go out there and continue to be more than conquerors in our trials, in our challenges, not because of who we are, but whose we are in Christ. I hope you enjoyed this message. Go have some great table discussion.